We're back with part two, and I'm speaking with HADASSAH FEINBERG, who has filed lawsuits over what you've heard. If you heard in part one, this child and youth services, law enforcement, this web of misrepresentation and confusion and, by many accounts, illegality. And this is the part of the interview, HADASSAH, where I want you to get into where you are in the court system now and how the deeper you get into this, you find out how many other people and the ranks of people that are involved in it. Also, I just want to point out that this all started because you, as a American taxpayer in Pennsylvania, you filed a complaint against one of these giant entities that are unconstitutional. We can talk about that another day, and that have unlimited power. You filed a complaint against the experts and the directors of this government entity that thinks they can raise children better than parents. You filed a complaint against them, and instead of them saying, wow, we didn't know this or whatever, they immediately hit back at you, which the lengths that government entities go to protect government entities is mind-boggling. Can you imagine, and I know you can you imagine if they put half the work into doing their job as they did covering their ass? Yes. Imagine that. No, think about it. You can apply that to anybody. You can apply that to the governor's office, the FBI, the Secret Service, the school administrations. If they spent half the time that they spend protecting themselves, building paper trails to clear themselves, protect themselves, insulate themselves, and libel others, if they just spent that time doing their job, no one would have any complaints. But every time you raise your hand and say, excuse me, I think the election was stolen, well, you're in trouble. Or I think you mishandled these children, you're in trouble. So that's the introduction to our next exclusive segment here with HADASSAH FEINBERG, independent advocate for Pennsylvanians and her experience with children and youth. So thank you again for being on the show. And I know you probably have better things to do than sit in your car and be on the show, but I'm glad you're here.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I kind of went through this shock that they were coming after me. I never knew about what was going on behind the scenes. I knew that what I was doing was right. I was exposing what had happened, but I had never been prepared for responding to being a government target and the vast web and intricacy of them covering up for each other. I am going to say that once it got to Cumberland County, I informed Cumberland County, hey, look, I filed a lawsuit against them. They didn't tell you I was a foster mother because they don't want you to know that, but here's all the evidence, here's documentation. And, it must have been by the grace of God that the caseworker in Cumberland County, who was a 27-year veteran, said, hold on one second, what's going on here? This isn't right. Why did they take her kids? What did she do? Where's the evidence of what she did? She was helping that family, and there's absolutely no grounds. And Dauphin County tried to have a meeting with Cumberland County and influence them to continue on with this, propaganda against me. But then Cumberland County had their own meeting. They realized something wasn't right. And they had their own meeting and said, hold on, we don't have grounds to hold her kids. We are going to dismiss the case that they filed against her, and we're going to return her children. Of course, they wanted to ensure that they weren't going to be held liable, God forbid, if they made a mistake. And, they did their due diligence, which I can completely respect. They followed up with me 2 more times after they dismissed the case. And then at that point, I was like, listen, this is government interference. You guys need to let us alone. There was never any grounds. We're done. We're done.
Okay.
And that's where it completely closed. But they were our saving grace. They protected our family at a time that we were facing mass retaliation. So anyways, fast forward, because I was already on this, wild journey of exposing their crimes. As I was discovering more and more, I began to create a public platform. And I started hearing from more victims that have been suppressed, at which point it gave me an even wider scale of the more victims that are coming forward and the perpetrators are overlapping.
Yes.
The more you can start to realize how big the issue really is.
Right.
And so my initial filing was in the Pennsylvania Middle District Court. Actually, my initial filing was an emergency petition in Cumberland County when they first took my kids.
Okay.
I tried to name like Dauphin County Children and Youth. I didn't know I needed to name like specific parties. I'm not a licensed attorney. So that was my first filing. That judge that got that petition, it's weird because it was separate from Judge Guido. I didn't realize that Judge Guido's case was sealed. I didn't know anything about this, like getting into it. I didn't know it was sealed. So that emergency petition that I filed against them was docketed separately from Judge Guido. So it was like their thing got dismissed, but then I had this emergency petition against them. And he tried to throw it out. I have 2 appeals up against that judge. That's a county judge, I guess, Judge Matthew Smith. And he tried to assist the public officials. He actually states that in his memorandum. Oh, they're public officials. She's targeting public officials. Who the hell cares if they're public officials?
This is a great time to mention for people who have never been involved with this. And I've never been involved at the children and youth level, but I've been involved with other bureaucracies of state and local governments, and they have unlimited resources and unlimited BS to just entangle you in just a mess. It just takes 2 or 3 people to get on the same page with a lie. And pretty soon, and I know I'm mixing topics here, and we'll talk about this another day, but
no, this is important. This is very important what you're saying.
Pretty soon you're in a federal prison for waving a flag at January 6th. Or pretty soon you're being pulled over and someone's saying you're a bad mom. And no evidence is required anymore because we're unconstitutional in our governance. Our governance is now, well, Dr. So-and-so runs the department and his assistant is director such and such and administrator such and such. And like, who are these people? They're not even
off what you're saying.
They're not even elected. And you're filing this, and you should be able to file it. You shouldn't have to get 5 attorneys. And then you said it was sealed. And I'm thinking, well, why is it sealed?
So that nobody will know what's going on?
Exactly. What is the reason to seal a case like that unless it jeopardizes methods or, if there was an undercover op involved? The whole fact that they can railroad you, make things up, and then seal evidence. I mean, it's mind-boggling. Go ahead. It's just frustrating.
Yeah. Well, so what's interesting about this is too, like you said, like once they all get on board with each other, it's very, very hard to push back because the abuse of power, because they have a badge, like they must be better than everybody else. They must be more qualified. Listen, that Harrisburg police officer, that was there, that was an eyewitness. He doesn't even have children. Okay. I provided clothes from the back of my car. Now, yeah, he's a mandated reporter, but I was too. I was too. I have a
Yeah.
bachelor's degree in criminal justice. I don't even know if he has a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. I might be more qualified than him if I was to apply to the police department. So, you know what I'm saying?
Well,
Like, just
we're
because
just
someone's in a position doesn't mean that they're more knowledgeable, doesn't mean that they're more qualified. It doesn't mean that they're more credible than the person who's not in their position.
and this
Okay.
this is such a big aspect of your cases because most American citizens are just as smart, if not smarter, than the people that are in positions of power and deciding who's smart and who is smarter. For example, somebody you were talking about the judge who instantly said, "Well, you can't go after public officials." That's the
Why
whole
not?
point. That's the whole point that
That's the
they're
whole problem.
that's the whole point. You're a public official. You're working for me. What I can't do is I can't go down to my neighbor and say, "Hey, I hear you're slacking off at work. I'm going to go after you." I can't do that to a private person, but I damn well can do it to a public official. They're working for
Yeah.
us.
Well,
There's
so
this,
they tried to stop me. They tried to block
yeah.
me there. And so that's really what they do. They try to block you, but because of my tenacity and motivation
Well,
and passion,
obviously, there's some tenacity here.
there is tenacity here. And I think that's where they didn't expect this. And
Yep.
so I kept going with it. And so after that was like hitting a dead end, I said, well, you know what? I'm going to file an appeal. If you're trying to block me, and I have due process and I have constitutional rights to be able to report this, I'm going
Yes.
to file an appeal. Well, guess what they tried to do? They tried to block me from getting an IFP. An IFP is informa pauperis, where you can apply for a fee waiver. I'm a single mom, so I have the criteria to qualify for that.
Okay.
I've never, ever been denied it. I've always been approved for it. Remember, they assigned me a public defender, which means I'm qualified for an IFP.
Right.
Well, guess what? He tries to block me from an IFP. So I paid for the appeal. Unfortunately, I had to pay for it. But you know what? I did that. That wasn't going to deter me, trying to
Now, let
deny
me
that.
just to bring people in, yeah. And this second part, I think this is a very fascinating part of the story, because I think we, the people, not just in Pennsylvania but elsewhere, we've been beaten down and abused at so many different levels that we're almost afraid to take out the Constitution and read it. We're almost afraid to go to a court and say, all right, what paperwork do I have to file because the government is dumping all over me? How do I go about this? And then the government, most of the time, they spring into action to beat you down, maybe threaten to take your kids or censor you, or someone, before you know it, someone's calling your job, or someone's dropping a little, or what's even worse, this relationship, and we'll talk about this coming up, the relationship that our government has with most media, because most media is gutless. So before you can even get to, because Mike Wallace is dead. The real 60 Minutes people are dead. 48 hours, all that stuff that we used to think. Remember, there was a time, I don't know if you're old enough to remember, where you would think if there was some injustice, you would say to yourself, well, you know what? I'm just going to take this to 60 Minutes. They'll crack it open. Not anymore, because the government calls the local news affiliate. They call the local newspaper. They call CNN, and they say, if this woman or this man approaches you, or this election denier or this advocate, do not run it. And that's the other part of this equation that we're both now trying to punch through that. Go ahead.
Yeah. So to piggyback off what you were just saying, actually, I've been in touch with Elise Pearson. She's an investigative reporter from ABC. And I met with her, I believe it was back in December or January, and I provided all of the physical evidence to her. She's been communicating through text messages with me. We've talked on the phone, we've talked in person. She asked me when we have court trials. They have not released a single article about these crimes, yet they claim to be a investigative reporter and a nonpartisan reporter. of the CYS crimes against parents. They talk about Iris Mummerside. Oh, how did that happen? Who was liable? And here you have a foster mother,
Mhm.
giving you 1,000 pages of physical evidence. Look, this happened, and not a single word is uttered.
Do
Not
you
a single article.
Are you aware of any I know there's been several bloggers and podcasters and a couple platforms like myself that have given you, a platform. But are you aware of any corporate or mainstream media that has sent out a reporter to ask somebody something or make a call and say, hey, this is so and so at W such and such. Can you tell me more about the HADASSAH Feinberg case? Are you aware of any of that ever happening, or do they just ignore it?
They ignore it. The only responses I've got from her is, when do you have a trial date? When do you have when do you have something coming up? Aside from that, there's nothing. And I actually sent her a text message. I think it was like 2 days ago, letting her know, hey, listen, you know what? You guys have this public platform and you're promoting these government officials that are committing crimes, which in essence is an obstruction of justice. And you could be liable for being a defendant in an obstruction of justice case. I'm basically putting them on notice. Hey, if you have evidence of these crimes, and I've been telling you about these crimes, and you're failing to inform the public, you're misleading them with propaganda. Let's just give her an example. Governor Josh Shapiro, he failed the community. He failed to help me and the Smith children. He failed to help my children. He's from my Jewish community. I know that, Ellen Greenberg, all of you who know about Ellen Greenberg, she was murdered. He was approached by Ellen Greenberg's parents on Yom Kippur, which is the holy day for the Jewish people, at the synagogue, and the state police stopped them. I don't know about that.
Oh my
Nobody knows
God.
about that. The news is not covering this.
What they approached him? What? To just speak with him?
They wanted to speak with him. They're trying to get him on board with assisting them with the investigation and overturning the suicide to homicide. I think where they're making a mistake is they don't realize that he's part of it. So I've been in touch with Sandra Greenberg. She's the mother of Ellen Greenberg. And at this time, we can get a little bit into this, but she had sent me an email. This was back on, I don't know, it was like 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Now, when you say he's part of it, are you saying he's part of was he attorney general?
He's covering it up. He's covering
so
it
he's
up.
part of the cover up. You're alleging he's part of the cover up.
He went to school with Samuel Goldberg, the fiance that murdered her.
Okay. And you think this relationship may lead to a cover
and
up?
He's also being bribed because they've been donating to his campaign, and so there's a conflict of interest there. He's not going to expose it. He's not going to bring it forward. Even as Attorney General, I know that the district attorney's office, they were sending it back and forth. Everyone's trying to put it on somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's going to bring it to light. And that's been a cold case for 13 years. We now have evidence of the murder. We have evidence that Samuel Goldberg lied. He's not a credible witness. He lied about the body being moved. We have forensic experts that have already, made that.
Now, this is another case. I definitely want to bring you back on to talk about this case, because I'm familiar with that case. I think a lot of people in central Pennsylvania are familiar with that case. And I
don't want to get off track, but I did file a private criminal complaint against Samuel Goldberg for the murder, and it is with Larry Krasner's office right now. And do you think any news is covering that?
Well, no one's going to cut. No, yeah. And it's funny. You talked about
criminal complaint. Yeah.
You talk about, how news agencies say, you send them a bunch of information or documentation, and in many cases evidence, and then they say the news people come back. Again, I'm not pointing out anybody in particular, but I've been in the business long enough to see it happen over and over. Well, there's not enough there yet. Call us when you're in trial, or call us when. In other words, Call us back when you've done all the investigative legwork, HADASSAH, and when you've put
Yeah.
together a great story, HADASSAH, and then we'll do a 3-minute piece to make it
Yeah.
look like we broke it.
Yes. Yes. You got it.
That's
You're right on point.
that is exactly how most major news organizations work. We think that we call up, hi, this is Mr. Citizen. I think there's a crack house that is now selling fentanyl on the corner of 7th Street. And instead of the news person going, well, thanks for the tip, we'll go check it out, they say, well, wait till the cops call me, or wait till, let me know if someone dies. Or in other words, it's just too difficult. You can sit there as a news person and just make a living not investigating anything. Why do you think? And see, now you've got me upset, HADASSAH. Thank you. I'm just kidding.
Oh, I'm
No,
sorry.
I'm just kidding.
A lot of people.
No.
I
I'm just playing. You know that. But why do you think we are one of the most corrupt states in the United States? Why do you think that every single person who questioned the security and validity of the 2020 election has been persecuted to a level that most people wouldn't even believe? They'll believe it now because they're hearing what you went through when you filed a simple complaint. Imagine a governor, hypothetical governor or hypothetical senator. Imagine if it ever gets exposed, the relationship with voting machines and what the hell's happening. What's going to happen in less than 100 days? We still have ballot boxes and mail-in stuff. Nothing was done. And so you can imagine the frustration that most people have with media, because the entire population of this country is looking at the media now and they're saying, aren't you going to do something about the border? Aren't you going to do something about trafficked children? And locally, are you going to help this woman get her children back? Are you going to expose what's going on in the DA's office? And the answer is not until they get permission from people in power. Once CNN or Good Morning America gets permission, then they'll talk about Biden in a certain way, or they'll go after Trump in a certain way. That's the sad reality of how things have snowballed, because there used to be a time when if the police failed you, you could go to the FBI. And if the FBI failed you, you could go to the district attorney or the DA.
Department of Justice.
They have
hundreds of reports from me
the
regarding
DOJ. Yeah, the DOJ.
I haven't heard from them.
Yeah, the DOJ is laughable. And the thing that adds insult to injury, is the fact that the media, they do not have our back. We think they do with all these Action News reporting live tonight. We're breaking the story. You haven't broke crap. You don't break crap. It's vloggers and bloggers and podcasters and citizen journalists and people like HADASSAH that are out on the street. One of the worst mass murderers in this country, and I'm drawing a blank on his name. I'm so embarrassed. He was the doctor that was killing all the babies in Philadelphia, and oh, shame on me for forgetting it. There was no one in the courtroom except one blogger. And then when that blogger broke that story, you could not get a parking space on that block. The blogger broke the story, and everybody was like, oh my gosh, because everybody was told by their handlers, don't cover this. It involves abortion. It involves drugs.
But you don't see how vaping is behind the consequences.
I'm having a problem. My phone's gonna die. Hold on one second. You need to plug it in. We've been talking for a while and I'm losing battery.
It wasn't plugged in?
No,
oh
because I
my
had it
goodness.
on the dashboard.
Oh, I thought you were plugged in.
No. That's it. Complete failure.
No, you're back. You're back. It looks good. Sounds good. Anyway, no,
Okay.
I'm glad we went off on that tangent there because not this particular case, but cases like it are, everybody can relate to this. Everybody. I have people in my neighborhood that can relate to like 3 or 4 aspects of this case. I have had situations with this case. Another example would be the IRS. If you're in a politically great light, the IRS is your buddy. If you decide to file complaints against the IRS or local government, you're going to get audited. You're going to have crazy stuff happen. And we've allowed this to get to the point where, to teach you a lesson, someone shows up and says, we're going to take your kids until you get in line. And then you have to fight your way back. So what legal steps have you taken? And what is the status of those cases?
Yeah, so I have about 6 different lawsuits. I'm going to let you know there's no suits at this time against me. So it's just me going against them.
Good to know.
The only case they had against me was the one that was thrown out by Cumberland County. So I have 2 appeals against Judge Matthew Smith, and those are up at the Commonwealth Court. There's 2 dockets. One is 1429 CD 2023 and 1430 CD 23. Those are in preliminary stages because we got stuck at the IFP where he tried to block me. I appealed the denial of the IFP. So
okay,
I'm trying to hold people accountable for every single thing that they do wrong. And I think they're not used to that. They try to bombard you as a mafia. They try to click together. We're going to attack you as a team. You're by yourself. You're not going to be able to do anything about it. Wrong. I'm a victim, and there's hundreds of victims. And just like you guys are binding together, we're going to do that too. Because people are stronger together, especially victims that have been persecuted by the same perpetrators. So I have 2 appeals for that case from the Cumberland County Court, and it's in the Commonwealth Court. And then I filed a civil rights suit at the Pennsylvania Middle District Court. That's in front of Honorable Susan Schwab.
And this is this violation of your civil rights as a parent, or your children's civil rights being taken by the state? I mean, what is the
both?
Oh, okay.
Both. So first I had filed it against 6 Dauphin County children and youth employees. You know, I said Marissa McClellan, Scott Smith. Another one is Lisa Wheeler. She's the manager of Dauphin County Children and Youth. She was the one that lied under oath about the other hospital, never saying anything about those kids, trying to make me look crazy.
And see, that's a crime too.
Oh, perjury.
Lying. Yep. Of federal agency or a state employee lying under oath is more severe than if you or I did it.
Correct, but nobody holds them accountable. And that's what we're up against. We're up against lack of accountability, and you need to have some sort of legal knowledge to be able to fight this. So you're already up against the battle if you're a victim without legal knowledge. Because I have contacted at least 100 attorneys in Pennsylvania. It's very, very difficult to find an attorney that will take on a case against CYS because they have not had success. That's what was told to me. And the attorneys that will take them on are charging like $100,000. So if you don't have those funds, forget it. You have nothing.
And that's
you don't have that representation.
Another great point to come out of your battle is people need to know that how difficult it is to engage in this. And that's how they beat you down. And really what you need is the Constitution.
Yes.
And they not only nitpick you, but also there's a lot of, I look at how few lawyers help people in the election fraud process that said, look, there was election fraud in my precinct. Will you take this case? In Pennsylvania, there's not very many. I can count them on one hand. Think about that. There's how many hundreds of thousands of lawyers in the United States? And we had a stolen election. We had election of fraud in at least 6 states. You can't even get a lawyer to present your case because they're afraid somebody like a Shapiro administration or a Biden administration will make those phone calls and then your legal career is over. See, this is the other
they'll
part.
take your license away. They'll take your license away. I'll give you an example from one of my cases. I actually filed a complaint against the Penn State doctor, Catherine Crowell, for her obstruction in the case, for her assistance with Dauphin County to cover up the crimes against the Smith children. And Mindy Kell, she's a licensed investigator. Well, not anymore. She's no longer with their department. But they threatened her to resign, and she was looking into the crimes against the Smith children. And not only did they not cooperate, but I have emails from her stating that it's coming from her administration too.
Wow. So she was an ally. She was an ally
Yes.
of yours. She was
Correct.
one of the good guys. This is the other
Yes.
thing that makes me sad over this whole thing is there are so many good people in these agencies, but they don't have the power to implement it. In other words, it's kind of like, you know, most cops are good cops, but you get the bad stuff is the administrators, the chief who's too political, the corrupt mayor, or the person that is in charge of the investigative team. Maybe they have political aspirations. You know, someone with political aspirations personally comes to mind, Josh Shapiro. I think, you know, when he was like 7, he started to think, I'd like to be president. That's just my opinion. But when you get people like that, I don't think they want to be crusaders. I don't think they want to seek the truth. I think that there are people in the power positions that don't want a cop going off and digging deeper to get to the truth if it affects one of their donors or if it affects one of their rental properties. I think that it's just so deep across the board.
It really, really is. It really is. And what puts these victims at a disadvantage is that, so first we have that challenge that most victims don't have their own legal knowledge. I consider myself very blessed that I've been able to navigate this by myself. I was trying to, you know, go to law school, and then I started fostering, but I was already going down that road. But so you have that first, then you have the vast web of crimes and connections that you're up against, and you really need to be able to knock them down succinctly at the same time and be able to navigate this really complex, multifaceted, I don't even know what to call it, battle to be able to get anywhere. And so going back to the cases that I filed, so I filed the civil rights lawsuit, but then as I began to investigate more and more crimes and more victims were coming to me, and I started to realize like it's coming from the top down, I realized I was able to, you know, piggyback off of Fannie Willis, that, you know, the RICO lawsuit that she filed against Trump, or you know, the conspiracies and obstruction of justice and all of that. I was like, wait, hold on, we have these laws, we can hold these people accountable, we can do this. And so even though she was going up against Trump, I realized like this can be to anybody that obstructs justice, right?
Yes.
And so I started to research more about what she had done and piggyback off of that. And that's when I filed a RICO lawsuit. I first filed it in the Pennsylvania Middle District Court, but then what ended up happening was Honorable Susan Schwab, she consolidated that with my civil rights lawsuit, even though my civil rights lawsuit had named some of the parties I was putting in the RICO lawsuit. I didn't want the two consolidated because even though they're related, they're not the same. Plus, if I'm going to have a civil rights lawsuit, which is easily I can easily win that case because I have evidence that I was a fit parent and they never should have taken my kids, and I had tons of evidence. It would be dragged out by a RICO lawsuit because a RICO lawsuit is very complex. I have like 60 different defendants and yada yada. So what I ended up doing once I realized how widespread this was, I was able to remove the RICO lawsuit and file it with the Maryland federal court. It's now assigned in front of Honorable George Levi Russell III. The way I was able to do that was because a RICO lawsuit can be brought at any district court where there's a defendant. And so by adding a defendant, yeah, this was a process. I don't know. God's really helped me with this for sure.
Well, no, this is amazing. This is amazing because this is the weaponizing of our legal system that has kept Americans at bay, under the thumb, intimidated. And it's just like what you were saying about RICO. The fact that they can drag lawsuits out, like in general, for years is ridiculous. It's totally ridiculous. The fact that they can, I mean, when you think about that, are you still with me?
Yeah, I don't know what's going on.
I hear you.
Yeah, I hear you.
I don't see you. There you go.
You are. There. Yeah, and I just want to go back. To date, Honorable Susan Schwab has actually been very impartial. I definitely credit her for that. I know there's a lot of pressure on her from the state. I want to give her a lot of credit for that. I don't think that there was any intention for the consolidation to hold us back. But I did feel that the pressure that would be applied by the government officials on the RICO case would not be successful in a Pennsylvania court because of the connections and because of the the abuse of power and all of that. And so ultimately the most strategic way of navigating a RICO case is in a location that's impartial, and that's not within, and that's why I moved it out. And I'm very lucky that I was able to navigate that out. When she granted me an amended petition, I took that opportunity to remove those defendants out of that case, leave the civil rights case there, and file it. And so right now it is in the Maryland court, the RICO lawsuit. The case number for that is 1:24 CV 01957. It's captioned Feinberg, spelled F like Frank, EIN like Nancy, BERG, versus Cintron. It's spelled C like cat, INTRON. And there's multiple defendants, including Governor Josh Shapiro in there. It breaks down the murder of Ellen Greenberg. I mean, I just bring a lot of victims into that case. And although I'm not representing those victims, because you can't legally represent another plaintiff when you're not a licensed attorney.
True.
RICO has to show evidence of the long-term pattern. And that's what I'm pulling together in the RICO case. I'm a victim. I was affected by the RICO crimes that were committed against Ellen Greenberg because it's the same enterprise. This is the same Commonwealth enterprise. And that's how I'm able to connect them.
So you think the effort of cover up, evade, and reward just snowballs in our current government situation. And
correct.
So, and again, it's so sad because I think about the police officers and the agents that tried to help you. They have to answer to someone who inevitably, in a corrupt system, answers to someone who is not in it for them or for us, but for themselves. So eventually, I mean, it's like the oldest law enforcement cliche in every movie that, if the captain finds out you're investigating this on your own, this could be the end of your career. It's a cliche, but it's true. It's true. They got rid of the woman that tried to investigate your children being taken away. Did they not threaten her and say, don't go down this road? Right? I think you mentioned her name.
Wait,
She
what
was
is it again? Can you?
the
Oh,
investigate.
you're talking about Mindy Cal. Mindy Cal, yes,
Yeah, the woman
correct. She's no longer with the department.
Yeah, you told me that she was threatened because she said, I think there's something here. There's a problem here. We need to look into this. And someone said, no, you don't.
Yes, that's exactly true. And I mean, I have the emails to prove it. I've tried to submit the reports to the FBI, and we all know how that went. They've never contacted me back about that.
So I
But
want to
yeah,
I want to talk
it's
briefly
crazy.
before we wrap up, and I want to have you on again, but I want to talk briefly about the other victims that are finding you because of this role of advocacy you are playing. And I think it's good because it's not intimidating, because you are a mom, you are a patriot, and you are a citizen. So you have all these rights that so many of us have been losing in recent years. And the whole concept starts out with, how dare you question the government? There's always someone that says that, no matter what it is. Whether it's a parking ticket, whether it's a murder charge, how dare you question us? And we've let this snowball to the point where elections get stolen, charges get made up. So a lot of people, you have mentioned some of the names to me. A lot of people have, and I'm looking at one of your cases here, or one of your lawsuits. Now, is this still Feinberg versus Chardo? Is that still
Yes, I
active?
forgot to mention. Oh, yes, it is. It's
Okay.
active, and it's in its heightened stages.
Oh,
I
good.
already had it's wonderful. I actually had the county's the attorney's preliminary objections dismissed once as
Oh,
moot. I
excellent.
had them. I
So
did.
that was a
Yep,
win
I
for
have.
you.
Oh, that was a win for me. What they're trying to do now is they're trying to block. So remember, I filed a private criminal complaint. I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but I realized not only am I fighting, for what they did against my family, but we still have a mom whose children were placed back with her after she abandoned them.
See, that's what
She
I was wondering. What's going on with that case?
Correct. So I filed a private criminal complaint naming her and the county employees to the district attorney's office. I'm just going to let the public know that in Pennsylvania, any citizen can file a private criminal complaint when a crime is committed. You do not need law enforcement to bring that complaint. You can file the same thing. The only difference is that it has to go in front of the district attorney, and the district attorney has to approve or deny it. Now, here's the issue, and this is what I found to be very successful. The district attorney has a motive because he works for the state, right? So anything that's going to name a crime against the county, they're going to try to deny.
Conflict of interest.
Conflict of interest. They try to deny it instead of doing the right thing and appointing someone from outside Dauphin County, to investigate it. They completely tried to cover it up. I met with Fran Chardo. He's the district attorney of Dauphin County. I met with him in person. I sat with him for an hour and a half. I laid out the crimes. I showed him 1,000 pages of physical evidence. He is fully aware of the crimes that were committed against these children, and then the crimes that were committed against my family. But he still made the decision not to do anything because they are trying to cover it up. They actually asked me what other evidence I have, so that I can't get my hands on anything else.
Oh, yeah.
Horrific. Yeah, it's horrible. But anyways, I've been basically attacking them from multiple angles. So I have the civil rights lawsuits, but basically the private criminal complaint, even though they have the ability to control that,
right?
Guess what happens if someone tries to obstruct justice? They're committing a crime. So now, not only am I going after that mother, but now I'm going after you for failing your job, right?
Okay.
So by the district attorney not bringing charges against that mom when he knows that she committed a crime, he's now committing a crime, right? He has a duty to bring charges for crimes. So I have, if they try to deny a private criminal complaint, you have the right to petition the Common Pleas Court. Now
Wow.
we all know that the Common Pleas Court judges are friends with the district attorney.
Yeah,
So
it's very corrupt.
It's very corrupt and intricate. So what they tried to do with that, they tried to block the Common Pleas Court from reviewing the petition of their denial. And so what did I do? I filed an action in mandamus up to the Commonwealth Court. Hey, look, they denied the private criminal complaint. Well, I had the right to file a petition for review. They obstructed that. So now I'm coming to the Commonwealth Court telling them, hey, the Common Pleas Court is not doing what they're supposed to do.
Wow. I got to say this. You
just got to keep going.
You're a pit bull. And I say that in the most complimentary way. It's kind of like, but you know, in my audience,
that's how you have to knock it down. Like, without being succinct like that, they just run everyone over. They bulldoze everyone.
But imagine, and I was talking with someone earlier today before the interview, and I said, imagine if everybody did what you're doing. Imagine if can you imagine? Because
it would be amazing.
The way you're explaining this is as clear or better than some of the legal analysts on these ridiculous cable TV platforms. They don't explain it as clearly, and that's because they don't understand it. But you've been forced into this position, so you no longer have to rely on some attorney that may be biased. And the thing that bothers me about this whole system of district attorney, when you were saying filing the criminal complaint, and this gets into another thing we could talk about for hours on our next visit, is the grand jury. Most people don't know that the citizens control the grand jury, and they've changed. Now, just so you know, Pennsylvania is among several states that have changed that dynamic. But by constitutional law, the citizens can create a grand jury, and they can meet with a judge, and the district attorney doesn't have any play in that. In other words, you can have a grand jury is to protect the people. We've been led.
Well, and that's why they're trying to block it, because
that's exactly why. Yes,
they know that the grand jury is going to see right through this. This is black and white. I have 1,000 pages of physical evidence of these children being abandoned and abused, and they don't have anything against me.
I know.
Anything. And so they're trying to block it at the lower level, and I'm just going up and up the ladder. And I think where they're failing is that although I'm not an attorney, I am very knowledgeable, and I can look up the laws just like anybody else can. Any American citizen can look up these laws and interpret the laws the way they were deemed fit to protect the people. And so that's something they can't take that away from you. They can't take away your tenacity. They can't take away your knowledge. They can only block you from paying, there's only so much you can pay a lawyer, right?
Right.
You'll run out of funds. But if you can do all of this stuff by yourself, that's a weapon that you can use to defend, the civil rights. And
it's just
why
like
the Constitution was created like that.
It's like a simple reading of the Constitution. So many people don't know it. Like people will say, like a good example of the Fifth Amendment. I want to exercise my Fifth Amendment rights. The real meat of that Fifth Amendment is the grand jury. That I want to exercise my right to a grand jury. I want a jury of my peers, not your peers, not the judge's peers. I don't want a jury of your golf buddies. I don't want a grand jury of friends that gave money to the governor. I want a grand jury from where I live, my peers. Like in your case, if you were to get a grand jury for something, you would want moms and parents and neighbors and etc. on your grand jury. But what the government's trying to do is negate that amendment. So we don't have the ability to ever get in front of people with a brain and common sense. So it's always like, well, that's up to the district attorney. That's up to the director of the youth administration, whatever. And it's like, when do I get my constitutional right where the jury of my peers are allowed in the process of justice? That's what's exciting about what you're doing. Because if we just had, I think about all the people in your situation that, you know, they sell their car, they mortgage their house, they, you know, they take on an extra job to pay some attorney who they may not even realize either doesn't know what's going on or doesn't have a dog in the fight other than, hey, I can charge HADASSAH another billable hour because I filed a report that she can do by herself.
Well, I'm going to tell you something that's going to blow your mind. Before I got down to this point, I hired Mark Scaringi, okay, from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I hired Mark Scaringi when they were coming after my kids, and I didn't know what to do because law enforcement was not assisting me. I gave him a $5,000 retainer because I had never had crimes put against me. I didn't know what to do. And within 2 days, guess what he wrote me through an email? If you continue to file false reports, they can charge you with filing false reports. I fired him on the second day that I retained him, it's second or third day. And then he writes me an email that he has to bill me $1,000 from communicating back and forth through emails. I ended up having it reversed by the credit card, and the man has not taken me to court. So not only did I he tried to bill me $1,000 of the truth that I was telling him. He was supposed to be my attorney.
So within 48.
But he was advocating for them.
Wow. Okay. And this is all documented.
Documented. I can show you the emails from him.
So a $5,000 retainer.
Yes.
You bring in
to save my life. I didn't know what to do with me and my kids.
To bring in this attorney, and Scaringi says within 2 days you get an email that says stop filing.
I've read all your reports.
Okay.
Yeah, and basically, like, you know, that these are false reports, and if you keep filing, they can press false charges.
How did he know they were false reports? I mean, where did he?
I don't know. He must have been talking to CYS. That's my opinion.
But I mean, what would he, if you're his client?
Correct.
And he could
he would have had to either talk to law enforcement or talk to CYS, which means he would have been talking to a party that was not protecting my family.
Isn't that
unbelievable?
But I don't know the law in Pennsylvania, but isn't that a breach of client confidentiality? Were you his client yet?
I was, and that's exactly what I wrote him, and I fired him.
Wow.
I'm going to send you the emails. You can put them up
I can't wait.
Oh my God.
I can't wait.
I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it.
Well, now I know why so many people go after you.
Yeah, I kind of have the whole state against me, except for the people know what's true.
Yo, I know.
The Jewish community knows what's true. They told me, I went to a kiddush. A kiddush is like a celebration on the Sabbath that you have after you pray, and you know everyone's having some cake. And
I was wondering what that is. There cake involved?
Oh, it's so good.
Okay, see, I had heard about the kiddush cake before.
Yes, yeah, it's
okay.
Good. They put out a lot of goodies. And I was telling the Jewish community, like, I can't believe they took my kids and da-da-da. And they said to me, we know that what you're doing is right, but there have been people that have tried to fight this before you that have been a lot more experienced that have not gotten anywhere. And at the time, I didn't know about Ellen Greenberg from the Jewish community. I didn't know that she was murdered. I didn't know anything about that. All of these people did. They all knew about her because she was raised in the Jewish community in Harrisburg. I didn't know, but looking back at it, that they were so afraid for my life and they were so afraid for my family because no one has ever succeeded. That's why this racket has been going on for so long.
And when you talk about the racket And because I know just from speaking to people in places like Ohio and Michigan and Idaho, um, the whole children, not just the adoption, but the children, foster care, children youth protection machine, all that is just trillions of dollars. And if
Oh
you,
my goodness. Yeah.
and yeah, and the thing that's so scary is all you need is a handful of people in powers of decision making and power, and they can grift so much money from it. And it's basically grifting money from kids in pain.
These are corporations and shareholders that have created the family court. You can't just take away someone's children without them having a crime, like without them being charged with a crime. And this thing keeps moving. They have these family courts where they've created their own like void rules to work this whole business. It's
regulation.
This is like a whole nother like category.
Yeah,
but
regulation.
This is not what our Constitution was founded on. Yeah.
But that is what a communist or totalitarian state does. They take how can they get around the Constitution? They'll just make things up. They'll say, well, I know that's your constitutional right, but understand this is the children's services industry thing or whatever. Or I know that might be a constitutional right, but this is Cumberland County. And they just keep doing that, and we buy it. And then if you add in lawyers that can't be trusted, they make it worse. You know, I had a case totally unrelated to this. It had nothing to do with children or crime or anything. But I'll tell you in less than 30 seconds. I was so disappointed by my attorney, I decided to do the case myself. And I won.
Same
I was
here.
like, I said to my wife, why did we pay him? He came in and said, you need to do this and this and this. And common sense me said, why? I don't need to do that. They did this, and it's an idiot can figure it out. Well, that's not how it works, Ken. How many times have you been told that by someone in the system when you say, I'm reading the Constitution, it says here that 2 + 2 = 4, and this is the case I want to do. And they say, no, you have to understand, we live in a world where 2 + 2 = 7. But it doesn't equal 7. But that's the rules we have to play by. This is how we got to where we are in this country. People kept saying, to hell with the Constitution. I have it somewhere. To hell with the Constitution. These are the rules. I mean, this is the Biden administration. This is how it's done here. This is the Shapiro administration. This is children and youth. But it's not legal. It's not constitutional. And then you try to learn it. And what do? Well, you're going to have to file this much money, or you pay this much money to file. To file what? To file for permission to be involved.
To fight for my protection.
Exactly. Yeah. How much do I have to pay to utilize the Constitution in a process to protect my rights? Well, let us do the math. Let's start out with 10 grand. But what if I lose? Too bad. I've got a beach house. I'm an attorney. You don't.
Yeah, well, and once you start to realize what, the way it's designed and the way they made it, you realize that your only defense really is you learning it by yourself, because then you're not controlled by the state.
Yes.
They can't take away my license. I don't have a license.
Yes.
I'm a mom. I have experience teaching. I worked in counseling. I was a foster mom for 3 years. They thought I was great at that. You know, I don't need a license to tell you the truth. I don't need a license to translate the laws. They're English. I speak English. I also speak Hebrew. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, that's their weapon against us, is making you think that you need a lawyer to follow what they want. No, you can interpret the rules by yourself. You can file these things by yourself. And people that try to block you and tell you, oh, we're not going to waive this fee, well, guess what? You can fight that too. So, you know, you just need the passion, you need the motivation, and you need the mental strength to be able to keep going up against them, because it is exhausting. It's definitely exhausting. I'll admit that, but I could do it. And
I didn't know you would be as inspirational, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but what you're saying is so inspirational, especially now with what's happening in this country across every state with you know, election fraud lawsuits and January 6th garbage and saying the wrong pronoun ridiculousness. All this stuff that's happening. We don't need a lawyer to negotiate us through the Constitution. They're the ones that need a lesson on the Constitution. They help break it. Think about how many 95% of cases don't go to a jury in this country. And that's one of the most valuable rights in the Constitution of the United States. You have a right to a jury of your peers. You have a right to a speedy trial. And the state has an obligation constitutionally to present exoneratory, what is it? Exculpatory evidence. Exculpatory. Yeah. And those are the three biggest things we get screwed on. You want to take on my company for killing your child with a particular drug or something? We'll tie you up in court for 25 years. Well,
I'm going to tell you, Daniel Harris, I'm working with Karima. Daniel Harris, they committed a Brady violation. District Attorney Fran Chardo and a couple others committed a Brady violation. He's been sitting in jail now for like 12 years. I tried to send him a copy of a misconduct letter that I sent to the Common Pleas Court in Dauphin County. I tried to mail it to him at the jail. Guess what they did? They stamped it, refused, and sent it back to me. He never got it. I can show you a copy of it.
See, this is
believable.
What is going on that our government, let's see, they monitor the media, they control the DOJ, they obviously they have a lot of control of mail, especially in Pennsylvania because of those damn mail-in ballots. And they're also controlling HADASSAH's letters to a fellow citizen. You don't lose all your rights when you're incarcerated.
Well, guess what? I just found out that you're going to find absolutely fascinating and horrific. I don't know if those two words go together, but I just discovered mail fraud and I reported it to Inspector General, because remember how I took the private criminal complaint up to the Common Pleas Court?
Yep.
I just found out that President Judge Scott Evans signed an order in Dauphin County recusing the entire Dauphin County bench and directing his court administrator, Stephen Lippert, who happens to be a defendant of RICO crimes, Stephen Lippert, to assign a judge from outside to my matter. Guess what? They withheld the order. I didn't receive it until July 8th. And if you look at the envelope, it's metered and timestamped by the court on May 28th. I didn't get it from the post office until July 8th. And the post office sticker, because I have my mail forwarded, the post office sticker says July 2nd. So it went from May 28th all the way to July 2nd being withheld. Do you know about the Dauphin County clerk, Bridget Whitley, that just resigned, and Rajette Harris was terminated, and Deputy Cole Goodman was terminated? They withheld this order. And now those, I'm filing up to the Commonwealth Court, this action in mandamus. They're here with their counsel fighting about that I don't have a right to relief at the Common Pleas Court. Meanwhile, they're not even mentioning that there's an order, which I just got.
Oh my goodness.
What? Mind blowing. So like now, I mean, they just keep making the RICO case better and better. Like, if we wait a couple more months, I mean, the RICO case is going to be a closed case.
Yeah, they're
Like,
just wearing you down.
but it's unbelievable how many more crimes they're adding for the case. They're just making my case stronger and stronger. Like, it's unbelievable. So
Well,
I'm just very grateful you brought me in on here.
I'm thrilled to hear all the details of this. And this is just one chapter of your story, and I want to have you back. But
Thank you.
I'm thrilled to hear the steps you're taking, because a lot of people will, they'll say this is wrong and that's wrong, and you're getting in there and using the constitutional, legal, peaceful methodology and the tools that we have. And I love the fact that you have so much documented. And she has a ton of stuff documented, folks, if you want to check all this out. It's not like,
yes,
she's not just sitting in her car rambling.
Yeah, no, I actually, if you look at my public Facebook page, it's called Speak Up. There's a couple people that have the same name. So if you look at, I think I have my background, my cover page is like a court document in the background.
Yep.
If you scroll back to October, I was uploading evidence since the very beginning. I've been transparent with the public. I've been trying to expose it, and that's why they've been coming after me and targeting my family so much. So
wow. And one more thing about attorneys, and because most people know I hate most attorneys, even some of my former ones, but not all of them. There's some good ones. There's some good ones out there. But keep in mind, because of the way the state bar associations are set up, attorneys work with the state bar and the courts, even defense attorneys, the same way doctors work with pharmacists. There's a symbiotic relation there. That's why attorneys are so quick to plead down cases. They plead down cases because then everybody wins. They get paid. The district attorney, the DA who's trying to be a senator, who wants to be an attorney general, who wants to be, they just start stacking up convictions, even if these people don't have to be brought to justice or whatever. And that's why 95% of people never see a jury, because the defendant says, I want a jury. I know if my case is heard, people will understand. Well, that's not how it works. You better, and then they say stupid stuff like, you better pray you don't get a biased district attorney. Well, that's your job to make sure I don't have a biased district attorney, or make sure the judge isn't crooked. You're my defense attorney. So there's so many layers to the bullcrap. And we have to start taking the initiative that HADASSAH is taking. And maybe there'll be some kiddish cake in there for us. Is that what it's called? A kiddish? Kiddish? Yes.
Kiddish.
Kiddish.
Like KIDDUSH.
Right. Well, I have to tell you, I'm so glad that we got a chance to meet on this platform, and you're welcomed here anytime. You have all my contact numbers. You have all my information, and I know you're working on a few other things. I want to get up to date on those in the future, but I think you're a real inspiration for, not just moms, but just anybody who feels helpless or hopeless. Go to the library, do some research, go buy yourself a $1.39 copy of the Constitution. And
I've offered, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I've also offered to give my my civil rights suit and my criminal complaints. I've offered to show copies of it to anybody that wants it. If you get on my public Facebook page and you leave your email, I will send it to you, because if you need help filing, while I can't advise you legally, I'm not an attorney, you're more than welcome to mimic the template that I've already done. So, I set it out. It's not being thrown out of court. It meets the criteria, and you're welcome to follow the same example. So. I can't hear you. I think I lost you.
No, I'm here. I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Okay.
Yeah. I think even the computer's saying, okay, wrap it up, Ken.
It's time to go. Yeah.
But just to remind people, it is not hopeless. It's not dark, because you got yourself out of what could have been a hellscape. Imagine if you went down the road of paying hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees. It would still be being dragged out. And you basically,
Definitely.
you fought it on your own, peacefully and legally. The good news is, like HADASSAH, you've run into judges that have a brain and are good. And you will run into district attorneys, and you will run into investigators that are good. But the reality is, there's just so much cross-pollination of profit and influence that we, the people, have to start doing what our founding fathers said. And that's becoming knowledgeable about our government, our Constitution, how it works. And you're a good example of that. So thank you again for being on the show. God bless you, and have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you. Stay safe.